famished antelope staggers to the riverbank. Dipping its head nervously, it begins to slurp. The water seems calm until it explodes. A Nile crocodile bursts from below, trapping a young antelope in a blur of teeth and churning water. It's over in seconds. In this river, death is always just a mistake away. This is the wild Nile, but to the south, at the source of this 6,600-kilometer stretch, things seem peaceful. Dawn slips over Lake Victoria. The horizon glows pale gold, streaked with a faint pink, as mist clings low over the water. The distant shore fades into the haze, and the lake feels endless, as it should, being the largest tropical lake in the world. From its northern edge flows the White Nile. The lake is alive even before the sun clears the horizon. Ripples betray fish moving near the surface, pursued by something bigger. Lake Victoria has always been a hotbed of abundance, home to hundreds of species found nowhere else. But its balance has shifted. Today, one predator dominates, the Nile perch, Lates niloticus. It was brought here in the 1950s. At first, few noticed its rise. Then the balance tilted. Native cichlids began to disappear. The perch grew fat. Heavier than a man, longer than a door, it is now the lake's supreme hunter. Its skin gleams silvery grey, tipped with green in certain light. The head is massive, the jaws lined with teeth made for snatching and swallowing prey whole. The Nile perch prefers the dim hours, hunting in the veil of dawn and dusk. In the twilight, a shadow waits among the reeds or under a fallen branch. A school of tilapia passes by. The predator bursts forward. One push, one bite, and the lake claims another life. During the day, when the heat is on, it retreats to cooler depths. There it remains out of reach of the crocodiles that prowl the shallows. Adult perch roam open water, but the young hide among vegetation near the shore, feeding on insects and small fish. As they grow, they move outward, changing their diet from fry to prey as large as their jaws allow. Even their reproduction follows the rhythm of the water. When rains swell the lake and food is plentiful, they spawn in shallow floodplains. The eggs float, tiny lives tossed into the current, swept toward weed-covered nurseries where survival is a gamble against countless other mouths. Only a fraction survive. But those who make it can live for decades. However, this triumph carries a shadow. The perch has stripped away much of the lake's native richness. The colorful cichlids, which once numbered hundreds of species, have been driven to the brink of extinction. Here, the water decides winners and losers, but human decisions have changed the rules. Along the papyrus-fringed bays, another hunter stirs. A flash of fire and sapphire among the reeds. No bigger than a human hand, the highly territorial collared kingfisher, Corythornis cristatus, dominates its stretch of shore. Metallic blue back, blazing orange breast, a crown flecked with iridescent speckles, and a long crimson dagger-like beak. The bird is awake and hungry. It perches low over still, motionless water. Its eyes scan the slightest ripple. Then, a dive. A clean spear in the lake, barely a splash. It surfaces with a silver sliver waving in its beak. Returning to its perch, it thumps its prey against a branch until it's immobile, then swallows it headfirst. Within seconds, the bird preens itself, running its beak through its feathers to keep them oiled and waterproof. On this river, soggy feathers mean death. Between hunts, the bird moves from perch to perch, patrolling. Its high-pitched metallic calls cut through the air, warnings to rivals. Although small, it fiercely defends its fishing ground. During breeding season, a pair burrows into a sandy bank, carving a narrow passage that ends in a dark chamber. Both parents feed the chicks. When they finally fledge, the young must learn quickly, fishing under their parents' watchful eyes before setting out on their own. Survival, once again, is dictated by water. The abundance of food during wet seasons strengthens the broods. Harsh droughts mean hunger, silence, and empty nests. High above, a new voice breaks the stillness. This long, rolling cry belongs to the African fish eagle, Haliaeetus vocifer. White head and brown body, it scans the surface from a towering tree. A flash betrays movement. A fish swims too close to the air. The eagle launches itself. Wings outstretched, it glides low, talons outstretched. Impact. The water explodes as the talons close. If the fish is small enough, 2 kilos or less, the eagle lifts it clean. If the prey is too heavy, the bird doesn't give up. Flapping its wings, it drags the prize to the shore, towing it on the skin of the lake. Strong, but not limitless, it constantly measures its power against the weight of the water's gift. Even its reproduction is tied to the water's calendar. In the dry months, when the clarity favors hunting, pairs raise their chicks. Their nest is a huge platform of sticks, reused year after year, growing to a width of 2 meters. From these heights, the eagles call, patrol, and defend. Today, however, as the sun rises, the mist dissipates. Lake Victoria stretches to the horizon. Its surface gleams like a sheet of hammered metal, but every ripple hides a drama. Kingfishers dive, eagles scream, crocodiles slither beneath. Here begins the Nile, and already its power is evident. Water rules all. At the edges of the lake, the water is shallow, the reeds thick, and smaller creatures struggle to survive among the giants. Tilapia graze on beds of papyrus and aquatic weeds, scraping algae from stones, nibbling tender shoots. They move in small schools never far from cover. A shadow above, a passing heron, or worse, an eagle, causes them to scatter into the greenery. Even here, the river rules. When breeding season arrives, males clear areas on the lakebed, fanning them with their fins to form neat depressions. The females lay their eggs, fiercely guarded by the males until the young emerge. In this shallow water nursery, survival depends on vigilance. A single mistake can mean the end. Tilapia are small players, but their grazing, reproduction, and feeding sustain the lake's food web. Perch grow fat on them. Birds depend on them. In the grand scheme of things, their fate is the fate of all. Just beyond the tilapia's hiding places, the water bulges with something much larger. From a distance, they look like rocks scattered across the lake, eyes and nostrils breaking the surface. But the water is churning, and a body the size of a barrel is moving. Hippos, hippopotamus amphibious, spend their days almost weightless here, skin cooled by the lake, bodies hidden beneath its surface. They seem peaceful, drifting in herds along sandbanks, but the stillness is deceptive. Dominant bulls fiercely guard their stretches of water. They proclaim their dominance with clouds of manure flung high with their tails, and with low, thunderous grunts that roll across the bay. Here, the sound travels far. Each message warns rivals. This pool is occupied. At dusk, the mood changes. The herds stir. From well-worn paths, hippos emerge from the water, enormous bodies glistening with red-tinged sweat that acts as sunscreen and armor against infection. They silently climb ashore, moving with surprising speed for animals of their size. They graze all night, 40 kilos of grass in a single day, cut cleanly with wide lips. They wander for miles under the cover of darkness before returning at dawn to their pools, bellies full, jaws green with grass. The young learn the rhythm from the start. Born in shallow water or on sloping banks, they cling to their mother's sides, pulled toward the safety of the water whenever danger approaches. The mothers protect them, keeping them away from dominant males, teaching them the routes from river to meadow and back. For these young, survival means remembering the ways. Without water, there is no shelter. Without grass, there is no life. The river provides both. While the hippos rest during the heat of the day, the air belongs to the birds. On bleached logs and rocky outcrops, cormorants spread their wings wide, dark feathers gleaming in the sun. This pose isn't vanity, it's a necessity. Their feathers are less waterproof than those of most waterfowl. Underwater, this helps them dive and move nimbly, twisting like arrows as they chase fish. But after each dive, they must dry. The sun does the work. Once ready, they launch themselves again, legs flapping, wings tucked, plunging into the depths. The tilapia scatter. One is caught, held firmly in a hooked beak. Back at the surface, the bird flips its prey, lining it upside down before swallowing it in a single, practiced gulp. On a single log, several may gather, resting side by side, alert eyes turned skyward. As they dive to escape hunger, they must surface to avoid becoming prey themselves. The cry of the osprey reminds them of this. At Jinja, the lake narrows. Once spread out like an ocean, the water now gathers in a channel. This is the source of the Victoria Nile. The outlet glides through reeds, curves around rocks, and begins the northern journey that will sculpt landscapes and decide lives. The flow quickens, setting the pace for what awaits downstream. Then the river meets the stone. At Murchison Falls, the wide Nile is forced through a gorge barely 7 meters wide. The transformation is sudden, violent. A still sheet of water becomes a thundering torrent. The drop is known as the Devil's Cauldron. The spray explodes skyward, nurturing a band of green on the cliffs, ferns, mosses, orchids, life clinging wherever the water vapor allows. Dragonflies dart in the sunlight, butterflies dance in the mist. The falls roar as they have for millennia. And down below, where the spray softens into mist, lurks the river's oldest ruler, the Nile crocodile, Crocodilus niloticus. It blends into the mud and reeds, its mottled skin as grey as the sandbanks where it basks. Only its eyes and nostrils betray its presence. Beneath the surface lies the rest, 4 meters of armored muscle, its tail coiled like a spring. Its jaws, studded with conical teeth, are made not for chewing but for grasping. Once caught, nothing escapes. The crocodile is patient. It doesn't chase its prey through the water like an osprey, nor graze like a hippopotamus. It waits, minutes, hours. An antelope comes too close. In a burst, the calm is broken. The attack is instantaneous, the result certain. The tail lashes, the body twists in a death twist, and the river itself seems to tighten around the victim. Crocodiles aren't just killers, though. At night, mothers return to the sandbanks where they buried eggs weeks before. Yet one of the Nile's most persistent robbers is already waiting. Elegant and relentless, the Nile monitor, Varanus niloticus, prowls the edges of the colony. With its vibrant tongue and sharp claws, it can burrow deep into a nest in minutes, devouring dozens of eggs before a mother even notices the intrusion. But tonight, the lizard isn't so lucky. A single flick of the mother crocodile's tail scatters sand and predator alike. Antelopes, buffalo, and zebras attempting to cross Africa's great rivers often find themselves at a severe disadvantage. Their strength and speed on land become useless in deep water, where they tire quickly and lose the ability to maneuver easily. Even the mighty hippopotamuses, larger and more aggressive than most river animals, cannot match the sudden acceleration of a crocodile's close-quarters attack. Even so, hippos are not defenseless. When attacked, they can strike back with jaws strong enough to crush bone. These encounters are rare but illustrate the balance of power in river ecosystems where the Nile crocodile reigns as the apex predator. The crocodile's body is designed for ambush. Its limbs are short but robust enough to drag its enormous mass to the banks and to power quick bursts of speed when necessary. Its lifespan is dictated by temperature, season, and the rhythms of the river itself. Like all reptiles, crocodiles are ectotherms, relying on external heat to regulate their bodies. Much of their daily cycle is dedicated to thermoregulation. In the early hours, they often crawl onto sandy banks or smooth rocks, remaining perfectly still with their jaws open. This allows heat to escape, a reptilian version of sweating. At midday, when the sun becomes scorching hot, they slide into the river to keep cool, often floating with only their eyes and nostrils exposed. As evening falls, sunning resumes briefly before the animals glide silently into ambush positions. Their diet is primarily aquatic. Young crocodiles start out with insects, amphibians, and small fish, while adults turn to larger prey such as fish, birds, and mammals. They wait on the shore, patient and motionless, the ultimate embodiment of stealth. When prey comes within range, the attack is explosive. The crocodile lunges forward, closing its jaws with one of the most powerful bites in the animal kingdom. The struggling prey is dragged underwater, where it drowns before being torn to pieces. Since crocodiles cannot chew, they resort to the notorious death roll, a twisting maneuver that tears flesh from bone and allows them to swallow whole chunks. They can go weeks, even months, without eating. Territorial instincts are also very strong. Males, especially during mating season, claim the banks and defend them with thunderous roars, displays of size and, if necessary, violent clashes. Such battles, although fierce, rarely escalate to the point of causing disabling injuries. Survival, after all, depends on strength. Females assume a different kind of protection. Although not as territorial, they are fiercely protective of their nesting areas. Courtship begins as the dry season wanes, when males attract mates with deep vocalizations, head banging in the water, and physical shoving. When the rains soften the banks, females excavate nests up to 0.5 meter deep, depositing between 25 and 80 eggs. The nest is hidden beneath soil and vegetation, which serve as both camouflage and insulation. For nearly 3 months, the mother remains nearby. Eventually, faint chirps rise from below. The young push to the surface. The mother gently takes them in her jaws, carrying them to the water. For several weeks, she protects them, a rare tenderness in a reptile feared for its ferocity. Even so, survival is slim. Many hatchlings fall prey to fish, birds, and even other crocodiles. The survivors, however, grow up to become vital regulators of their ecosystem, controlling fish populations and removing sick or weak animals from the herds that come to drink. Even the remains of their meals feed scavengers, recycling nutrients back into the system. Despite their solitary reputation, Nile crocodiles display surprising social behavior. They may sun themselves side by side, their bodies arranged in a hierarchy, with the largest individuals claiming prime spots and first dibs on food. During seasonal fish migrations, dozens gather in precise positions along the channels, each ready to intercept passing prey. Although competition is inevitable, a degree of tolerance also exists, especially when resources are plentiful. Crocodiles and humans has always been complex. The ancient Egyptians worshipped them through the god Sobek, a deity associated with fertility, strength, and the life force of the Nile. Temples were dedicated to him, and crocodiles were sometimes kept in sacred pools. In modern times, the relationship is more contentious. In rural Africa, where people obtain water and fish from the same rivers, encounters can turn deadly. Habitat destruction, hunting for their skins, and outright persecution have reduced their numbers in some places, but the Nile crocodile remains remarkably adaptable. Protected reserves and national parks safeguard large populations. Murchison Falls National Park in Uganda offers some of the most dramatic crocodile territory on the Nile, where the river channels through a narrow gorge before spilling into wide, still, prey-rich pools. Much further north, Lake Nasser, created by the Aswan High Dam on the Egypt-Sudan border, has become another stronghold. Throughout its length, the Nile continues to carve sanctuaries for crocodiles. In places like the vast Sud wetlands in South Sudan, remoteness itself functions as a refuge. Here, crocodiles remain largely undisturbed, roaming one of the last true wildernesses in the Nile basin. In quieter stretches, crocodiles share space with hippos. The relationship is cautious but functional. Hippos, focused on grazing, enrich the waters with nutrients, while crocodiles regulate fish and prey populations. Crocodiles avoid adult hippos but may prey on vulnerable calves, a risk that provokes fierce maternal defenses. When tensions rise, hippos chase away intruders, but every rule has its exception. In the Ruzizi River of the Congo Basin, some 1,200 kilometers from Lake Victoria, stories circulate of a shadow that was more than flesh and blood. His name was Gustave. This Nile crocodile was like no other. At nearly 6 meters long, longer than a pickup truck, and weighing over a ton, he was the stuff of legend. Although never documented by scientists, many kills are attributed to the enormous reptile. His immense bulk slowed him down on the hunt. He could no longer dash after fish or antelope. Instead, he turned his appetite toward larger prey, buffalo, hippos, and most terrifying of all, humans. The first stories of Gustave date back to the mid-20th century. Fishermen returning from the river told of a monster that overturned boats without warning. Villagers warned children not to play on the riverbank. For some, Gustave was not just a crocodile, but a curse sent by the river itself. Others believed he was an immortal spirit, too old and too strong to die. His skin bore the story of battles against man and beast alike. Gunshot wounds that failed to kill him, spear cuts, marks that told of desperate attempts to end his reign. You can't kill Gustave, some villagers would say, because Gustave is not just a crocodile. Over time, the reptile's reputation spread far beyond Burundi. Unverified reports claimed it was responsible for hundreds of deaths. More cautious estimates suggested fewer than 60. But for those who lived along the banks of the Ruzizi, numbers mattered little. Fear kept people out of the water as effectively as facts. Scientists and documentary filmmakers arrived to uncover the truth. Herpetologist Patrice Fay led the most ambitious attempt, building a massive steel trap reinforced with girders, baited with live goats, and monitored by hidden cameras. For weeks, the cage remained in shallow water. Villagers would gather at dusk, hoping the great crocodile would be caught. But Gustav never entered. Film crews chased rumors for years. Sometimes they captured only a swirl of water or a distant ripple too vast to be mistaken for anything else. Other times, a gigantic head emerged just long enough to remind them who ruled the river, and then it slithered away like a ghost. The last reliable sighting occurred in 2009, although some claim it survived until 2014. After that, silence. Did it finally die? We can't be sure, but in any case, the legend fuels the Nile crocodile's fearsome reputation to this day. Further north, the Nile, having passed through its narrowest passage, widens again as it continues its leisurely journey. From the sun-scorched meadows that line the river, the first outlines of giants emerge. They are African savanna elephants, Loxodonta africana. Their slow, deliberate movements betray their weight of hundreds, even thousands of kilograms. The matriarch leads. Her ears fan the air like living candles, blood coursing through delicate veins, cooling her vast body. Each step presses into the dry earth, marking a rhythm older than memory. Around her, daughters, sisters, and calves follow. The united herd moves as one. The bulls are absent. They wander alone or drift in loose groups of males, crossing only at the margins. The matriarch remembers. She keeps a survival map in her mind. Hidden watering holes in times of drought, safe floodplains to cross, paths that lead to shade and fruit trees when the earth cracks under the sun. She guides her family along these routes. Young and old, male and female, they trust their instincts without hesitation. They must to survive. A low rumble spreads through the wetland. Humans can't hear it, but the herd can. Infrasound travels for miles. The grass breaks the line of sight, but the call keeps them together. The young stumble, tiny legs wobbly under enormous bodies. They retreat beneath their mothers for protection. The juveniles stay close to the matriarch, absorbing subtle cues, trunk movements, ear flicks, low murmurs. Each gesture carries meaning, warnings, guidance, comfort. The river comes into view. The matriarch pauses. She assesses water levels, tests the current, and gauges the approach to the bank. Their trunks sweep the shallow pools, absorbing gallons of slime-stained water. The young follow suit, clumsily, spilling more than they drink. The adults wade deeper, save for slow, deliberate trunk sweeps. Mud rises and smears over their bodies. Their skin darkens, becoming a shield. Against the scorching sun, against the biting insects, against the relentless pace of life here, food never rests. Their trunks uproot aquatic plants, break branches, and tear tender leaves from riparian trees. However, the wetland is not free from danger. Nile crocodiles float in deeper channels, invisible, patient, waiting. An adult elephant cannot be threatened, but the calves are vulnerable. The adults close ranks, forming a living wall of protection. Their unity is both a shield and a strength. The herd moves again, following ancient corridors. Rain rules the landscape. When floodwaters rise, the balance tips. Grasslands turn into lakes. Once dry paths are submerged. Predators shift their hunting grounds. Elephants navigate with a memory older than the flood itself. Seeds pass through dung, planting life far from its source. Large feet carve paths in the tall grass, creating highways for other creatures. Dry riverbeds reveal hidden water when the rains fail. Life persists. The sun climbs higher. Shadows shrink beneath massive bodies. Calves pause in puddles, experimenting with mud. Juveniles practice trunk gestures, learning coordination, imitation, and subtle warning signals. The matriarch watches, scanning the horizon. Her ears twitch. She senses distant predators, the scent of humans, even the subtle shift in the wind that brings possible danger. At midday, the sun beats down mercilessly. The hatchlings huddle beneath the adults. The juveniles shade each other. The matriarch leads the group toward trees that line the shore. Shade is scarce, but sufficient. They rest, ears fanning. Their trunks curl and uncurl, stirring the water to cool their skin. Even in stillness, the pack remains alert. Every rustle of grass, every broken branch, every shadow is observed. Safety is never taken for granted. The pack is a living web. Knowledge is transmitted by sound, movement, and touch. The matriarch's wisdom flows through every body, every snub of a trunk, every glance. The river narrows, the water accelerates, eddies form, and channels shift. Predators adapt. Crocodiles slink into ambushes. Hippos close shallow pools, retreating at dusk to fixed grazing routes. Osprey wings flash across the surface. The herd senses these changes and adapts. Survival depends on timing. The wetland teems with other life as well. Shoebills attack in still pools. Sitatungas disappear among the reeds. Each species is governed by water, where it flows, where it accumulates, where it retreats. The threats extend beyond predators. Poachers pursue ivory. Fences, farms, and roads fragment habitats, cutting corridors into pieces too small to sustain migration. Once numbering in the millions, elephants now number around 350,000 across the continent. The International Union for Conservation of Nature classifies them as endangered. Some refugees remain. Parks like Boma and Bandingilo in South Sudan provide shelter. Beyond protected areas, community initiatives seek to reduce conflict with humans. Farmers protect crops, experiment with chili repellents, and seek livelihoods that lessen the pull of ivory. But the future of these herds depends on vast connected landscapes. Routes must remain open, wide enough to sustain the memory of migration. South Sudanese elephants move across the Sud, linking up with herds in Uganda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and beyond. At dusk, softening the wetland, the herd returns to the bank. Trunks sweep water one last time. Mud smears on their backs, sealing in protection against the night. Youngsters play briefly, then settle beneath protective adults. Water shapes the land, the grass, and the animals. It decides who lives, who moves, who survives. Night falls. The matriarch closes her eyes briefly, though she never stops listening. Youngsters breathe softly, hidden beneath immense legs. Juveniles rest, still alert, ears twitching with each ripple. Predators may approach, but the adults remain vigilant. Through the night and until dawn, the elephants move with certainty. Paths blazed by generations guide them. Trunks sweep water in arcs, mud splattering over their backs. Seeds are sown unknowingly. Footprints create passages. Survival is learned and remembered. The herd is both family and ecosystem. In the morning, the sun beats down again. The colossi emerge from the shadow, starting all over again. Silence folds over the river once more, broken only by the rippling of fish and the voices of waterfowl. From the warm banks of the Nile, the Egyptian plover, Pluvianus aegyptius, comes into view. No bigger than a hand, it glitters against the sand and water. Its orange underparts stand out beneath a slate-blue back. A bold black mask crosses its face. About 17 centimeters long, it pauses on the bank, scanning the mud and shallow pools. Tiny legs advance cautiously. The curved beak explores. Insects, small crustaceans, and other invertebrates are all quickly plucked from the shifting sand. Unlike diving birds, it remains on land. Even here, giants shape their world. Elephants wade in the shallows and crocodiles glide beneath the surface. Yet the plover finds its rhythm. Life on the Nile is stratified. The river makes the rules. Flow, depth, and season tip the balance. Here, along certain stretches of the bank, the plover hops lightly between the gaping jaws of Nile crocodiles. Teeth and gums are a feast. Parasites are plucked out with delicate precision. The crocodile lies still, enormous and patient. A blink, a flick of its tail, and it otherwise remains motionless. The plover's survival depends on courage, timing, and trust. For the bird, the benefit is clear: fewer parasites, cleaner teeth. For the giant reptile, too, it doesn't care. As the river changes with the tide, so does the plover's day. It wades on the damp sand, pauses in shallow pools, and probes the sun-warmed mud. The floodplain is both a feast and a test. Small predators, snakes, birds of prey, and monitor lizards track its movements. But vigilance, speed, and precision keep the plover alive. In the breeding season, Egyptian plovers don't build elaborate nests. Instead, they scrape shallow depressions in the sandy banks above the high tide line. Small stones or fragments of vegetation mark the edges. 2 or 3 eggs are laid. Both parents take turns incubating the eggs, each guiding the chicks into the world. The chicks are born fully feathered, mobile, and alert. They leave the nest quickly, but remain close to their parents' side. The parents watch, teach, and protect. Timing is critical. Sandy banks must remain exposed long enough to protect the nests. Insects must be abundant when the chicks begin to feed themselves. The river dictates every step, every pause. The young plovers mimic their parents, probing mud and shallow water with clumsy, anxious strokes. Mistakes are common. A missed insect, a clumsy step in a puddle, a sudden tail flick from a hidden predator. They learn fast. As day leans toward dusk, plovers gather along the exposed banks. Even as night falls, the insects stir, the water shifts, and the floodplain adjusts. The plovers move with it, hopping lightly, probing, feeding, ever vigilant. This is just one story within a much larger community that thrives along the river. In the damp mist near Murchison Falls, a multitude of insects rise and fall in the humid air, attracting flocks of brilliantly colored bee-eaters. Slender-bodied and swift-winged, they flash iridescent hues as they dart in graceful arcs. Their prey are captured mid-air, bees, dragonflies, wasps, harvested with precision and then tapped against a perch to neutralize the stings before being swallowed. Bee-eaters are communal birds. They nest in colonies where each pair excavates long tunnels in sandy banks. These burrows form hidden chambers for their eggs, safe from most predators, but close enough to the insect-rich air above the river. On the slippery rocks and shallow waters beyond the mist, black and white wagtails flutter and glide, their eponymous tails bobbing up and down. Small, black and white, they feed where few dare to balance. They snatch tiny larvae and insects dislodged by the current. Their agility allows them to exploit microhabitats on slippery stones and shallow eddies, places overlooked by larger, less agile feeders. Distinguishable by their remarkable bills, African skimmers also share these channels. Their lower mandible is elongated. It is designed to slice through the water's surface as they fly low over it. The instant a fish or invertebrate touches the submerged bill, the upper mandible snaps shut, capturing the prey with astonishing swiftness. Skimmers often move in loose, coordinated groups, their synchronized flights casting rippling shadows across the river. For nesting, they prefer open sandy banks where they scrape shallow depressions to deposit their eggs. Beyond these gatherings, the Nile itself changes character. After being confined within the rocky gorge of Murchison Falls, the river unleashes its force in a slower, wider form. Here it becomes the Albert Nile, winding northward across vast floodplains. The current slackens, snaking between masses of papyrus that dominate the horizon. These dense swathes of vegetation rise more than 3 meters, forming green walls so dense that little light penetrates their lower reaches. Papyrus swamps are a world of their own, heavy with moisture and alive with hidden movements. Beneath the surface, roots tangle into thick mats, while above, stems sway gently in the breeze. Countless fish, frogs, and insects find refuge here, and birds adapted to life among the reeds thrive in the protective density. For larger animals, however, papyrus can be both sanctuary and barrier. Yet here dwells a creature perfectly designed for the swamp. At first glance, nothing moves. The swamp holds its breath. Frogs croak. A heron takes flight, white against the darkness. Then the reeds stir, a ripple spreads. From the stillness, a figure emerges. Brown, shaggy, silent, the Sitatunga antelope, Tragelaphus speci, advances. It doesn't belong to the open savanna. There are no great herds here, no hooves thundering over vast plains. Its cousins live in the sun, the hartebeest in the dry grass, the kudu in the dappled forest. But the Sitatunga has chosen the shade. It has chosen water and silence. Its hooves splay as it moves. Long fingers sprawl through the mud, balancing on soil that would swallow others whole. It doesn't sink, it floats. Each step is careful, deliberate. Where the swamp trembles, it glides. Its fur is coarse and impermeable. Droplets slide off it, forming tumbling beads. In the light, the animal shimmers in stripes of brown, black, and green. In shadow, it dissolves. The males are taller and heavier. Their coiled horns twist like polished wooden ropes, weapons for fighting, symbols for display. At dawn, when the light trickles like silver through the reeds, they feed, grazing on sedges and papyrus that no other antelope dares touch. Their lips curl, dexterous, tearing at stems, snapping off leaves. And when they meet, they clash. Horns lock, mud splashes, water ripples, a brief storm in the swamp. Then silence returns. Quieter, smaller, and hornless, the females move differently. They glide into deeper cover, guiding the young to hidden beds of grass. A newborn lies flattened, barely breathing, its fur mottled with pale spots. Motionless, invisible. The swamp hides it. Crocodiles drift nearby, jaws gaping just below the surface. The young do not move, only the reeds stir. Danger passes by, but the swamp is never safe. High above, a martial eagle circles. Its shadow drags across the papyrus. The mother stands still, head erect, ears perked. The eagle swoops down, a strike from above, talons ready, but the Sitatunga doesn't run across open land. It dives for the water, a splash, then silence. It swims strong and sure, its body hidden and only its nostrils breaking the surface. The eagle retreats, preyless, mocked. Predators take many forms. Leopards stalk the edge of the swamp. Lions test the shallow waters. But the Sitatunga has one defense: water. It submerges, it sinks. Sometimes only a ripple shows where it passed. Sometimes not even that. Territories shift and overlap. Males mark stems with scent glands near their eyes, rubbing papyrus as they pass. Females protect the young with silence. The young learn early, stay still, sink, disappear. Surviving means becoming part of the swamp itself. But the swamp is changing. The walls are closing in. Wetlands are drained for farmland. Canals cut through the reeds. Hunters push deeper into the reed beds with dogs and nets. What was once endless shrinks. The Sitatunga slinks away, but the space disappears, and yet strongholds remain. The Okavango Delta, the Sud swamps in South Sudan, and the papyrus floodplains in Uganda. Here, the Sitatunga still thrive. They move between reeds, between water and land, caught between light and shadow. Not many will ever see them. Even fewer will understand them, but they remain. The swamp keeps them, for now. Above the waterline, another figure awaits. Standing over the marsh at more than a meter high, the shoebill stork, Balaniceps rex, remains perfectly still. Its broad, clog-like bill, tipped with a sharp hook, seems almost too heavy for its head. Yet it is a perfect tool for what it does best. With sculptural patience, the shoebill fixes its gaze on the shallows, waiting for the slightest ripple from a surfacing lungfish. Then, in a sudden eruption, it strikes. The bill slams down on the water, scooping up mud, reeds, and fish all at once. With a jerk, the prey is stunned, then upturned and finally swallowed whole. The shoebill is a solitary ruler of its chosen territory. At dawn and dusk, its rumbling calls roll over the marsh like a drum roll. Nests of floating vegetation remain hidden in secluded corners, where both parents protect a single chick or two, raising them during the dangerous weeks when the water level must remain stable and fish abundant. At midday, the large bird retreats to the shade to rest and preen. Underwater, however, another predator dominates. Streamlined body and barely shadowed flanks, the African tigerfish, Hydrocynus vittatus, shimmers like living mercury in clear channels. Its mouth is bristling with interlocking, razor-sharp teeth, each anchored in bone, each capable of tearing at the scales of a prey. A burst of speed and the attack is over in a flash. Dragonflies skimming the surface, small fish swimming in schools. Even the unsuspecting chick of a bird too close to the water, anyone can fall victim. Most tigerfish measure up to 70 centimeters. Exceptional individuals can exceed 15 kilograms. Anglers prize them for their ferocity. Local fisheries depend on them as both predators and resources. But in the wild, they are the pulse of the current turned into flesh and fin. At the edges of the swamp, the air belongs to lighter, more delicate beings. Among floating lilies, a chestnut-brown bird with incredibly long toes walks as if weightless. The African jacana, Actophilonis africanus, nicknamed the lily walker, distributes its weight so finely that it walks over aquatic plants with hardly a ripple. Its chestnut plumage, white face, and pale blue bill camouflage it as it plucks its prey. Insects, grubs, and snails are its favorites. Interestingly, jacanas also reverse the expected role order. The larger females compete for males and lay their eggs in simple floating nests. Once the clutch is laid, the male takes over. He patiently incubates the eggs, rotating them in the heat of the day, shading them with his body, and when they hatch, guiding the tiny, fluffy chicks across the water. If danger strikes, he hides them under his wings. Moving into the open shallows, a lone figure advances with silent authority. The giant heron, Ardea. The Goliath heron is the largest heron on Earth. Standing up to 1.5 meters tall with a wingspan of over 2 meters, it rules the waterways of fish-rich lakes, rivers, marshes, and lagoons. Its reddish-brown plumage sets it apart as it plods along. Its long neck sways slightly with the rhythm of the water. Then it freezes. For minutes, it remains motionless, relying on razor-sharp vision to detect the faintest flash of scales beneath the surface. When the moment arrives, there is no hesitation. Its neck uncoils with explosive speed, and its dagger-like beak pierces the water. Seizing or skewering a fish too slow to escape, it extracts its meal. Large fish are its main prize, but frogs, reptiles, and even aquatic invertebrates occasionally fall victim to its precise strike. After such exertion, the great egret retreats to quieter terrain. There, it preens itself with careful strokes of its bill, smoothing each feather and restoring the waterproofness that allows it to wade and hunt so efficiently. Solitude defines this bird. It tolerates no rivals near its chosen fishing territory, fiercely defending the best spots against other herons and waterfowl. Although it can fly powerfully over great distances, it rarely strays far from its familiar haunts, returning season after season to the same stretches of water. When breeding season arrives, the rhythm of solitude changes. Stick nests, sometimes enormous in size, appear in tall trees or dense reed beds near water. Both male and female share the work of raising their chicks, although once the season ends, they return to their solitary habits. Beyond the shallows, the landscape changes. The floodplains stretch into drier lands, where the papyrus thins and the shadows deepen. Here, a different master of stealth reigns, the leopard, Panthera pardus. At once, it inhabits deserts, forests, mountains, and floodplains. Yet along this river, it thrives in a realm where water and land meet, where reeds and trees offer dense cover. By day, the leopard becomes a shadow within a shadow. It rests on rocky ledges, blends into the undergrowth, or perches on the branch of a fig tree. To the untrained eye, the mottled rosettes of its fur are nothing more than light flickering between leaves. But rest is never sleep. Its ears twitch at the slightest rustle of grass. His nose drinks in the scent trails carried by the breeze. Even with his eyelids lowered, the predator waits. As dusk spreads across the Nile, the leopard awakens. Hunger sharpens his movements. The river swells with life, redunkas tilting their necks on the bank, sitatungas carefully advancing through the flooded grass, wild boars trotting back to their burrows, each one a possibility. The leopard lowers its body, muscles flowing like water, each step careful, deliberate, a pause, a turn, a sudden lunge. In that instant, the silence turns violent. A chase lasting seconds decides survival. But this feline is no specialist. Its genius lies in adaptability. Where antelopes elude it, monkeys swinging through the canopy may fall victim to a sudden leap. In shallow pools, an unsuspecting stork becomes prey. Even young crocodiles, armored but vulnerable, sometimes disappear into the jaws of this opportunist. Nothing is wasted. Hunger accepts what fortune offers. Near villages, the balance between predator and human becomes fragile. Fish remains thrown by fishermen may attract the leopard. Chickens disappear in the night. A goat is dragged into the darkness. Few people see the cat itself, but the signs are there. A trail of paw prints in the mud, claw marks in the bark, the light scrape of a body on the earth. After a hunt, the beast doesn't stay on the ground where hyenas laugh and lions burst in. With a strength that defies belief, it hoists carcasses heavier than itself up into the branches. Suspended above the perils of the flooded plain, the meat can last for days. The feline eats slowly, methodically, always with one ear tuned to the sounds below. The male, fiercely territorial, ranges across vast expanses, scent-marking reeds and logs, warning rivals of his claim. His route may cross the ranges of several females, and in those overlaps, life goes on. For females, territory is reduced to something more personal, a patch of dense cover where cubs lie hidden. Born blind and helpless, they know only warmth and milk. Their mother protects them with her secret. She moves them often, shifting burrows from hollow logs to thickets of papyrus to crevices in the riverbanks, keeping them one step ahead of danger. Every journey risks exposure. Every night, hunting risks discovery of their absence. Survival hangs by the thread of their cunning. The river itself shapes their rhythm. In the dry months, prey animals concentrate around ebbing pools, making hunting quick and safe. Carcasses are plentiful. Cubs feed well. But with the rains, abundance brings its own difficulty. Prey is scattered across flooded plains, hidden by tall grass and swollen streams. The mother must travel farther, search longer, and return later to her young. The animal's survival depends not on brute strength, but on fluidity. It bends where others break, flows where others falter. This gift has allowed it to spread from Africa to Asia, from snow-capped mountains to sandy deserts. But even resilience has limits. The threats here are not crocodiles or lions, but people. Expanding farms cut down forests, roads divide hunting grounds, traps intended for bushmeat catch paws instead of hooves. Skins, once traded at markets, still tempt poachers. Conflicts erupt when livestock disappear, when a predator enters human space. Along the Nile, numbers are declining. Once common, the cat has been listed as vulnerable. Protected corridors along the river allow leopards to move without crossing agricultural land. Anti-poaching patrols are reclaiming previously lost territories. Local communities are learning to protect livestock with stronger fences, reducing retaliation. Ecotourism, too, values the live leopard rather than the skin. The river holds its contrasts. In the shallows, the imposing heron reigns with stillness and precision. On the banks, the leopard prowls with stealth and power. Two solitary hunters, united by the water but worlds apart, each shaped by the rhythms of the Nile. Dusk settles once more over the flooded plain. In the gloom, something stirs. Low silhouettes emerge from the grass. The spotted hyenas, crocuta, rise up. Along the Nile bank, the clan gathers, 80 strong, bound by rank and ritual. This is no scavenger's chaos, but a society ruled by blood. The females stand in the center. Power here is inherited. A cub born to a high-ranking mother will eat before others, command before others, and survive before others. Beneath them, tension coils. Every growl, every bite, every stolen morsel is a test. The clan is order wrapped in conflict. Their bodies reflect their role. Hunched shoulders, rippling muscles, spotted skin fading into the grass. Jaws that crush what others abandon. Bone, sinew, marrow, nothing escapes. As the sun descends, their voices rise. A high laugh bursts from the gloom, shrill, mocking, haunting. Another answers, lower, sharper, a challenge. Then comes the howl, long and rolling, carrying for miles. One call summons many. The hunt is on. They don't stalk, they don't leap, they run. Their power lies in resilience. The zebras sense it first. Panic ripples through the herd. Hooves scatter, dust stirs. The hyenas keep up their pace, relentless. The weak falter, lungs strained, muscles failing. When one falls, the clan closes in. Scavenging is more of a second weapon. A carcass left by lions, a beast fallen to disease, soon becomes theirs. Vultures flee as the clan descends. Jaws snap, bones splinter. The air fills with the sound of cracking skulls. Within minutes, nothing remains but dust. This appetite serves more than hunger. It clears the floodplain and stops the spread of plague. Rivals shape them as much as prey. Lions are their greatest test. Leopards cling to trees, holding carcasses safe from crushing jaws. Crocodiles wait, silent and ancient. Yet hyenas face them all with persistence. 20 voices against a lioness, 10 bodies against a retreating leopard. They fight like a tide, and often the tide wins. Beneath the earth, the next generation awaits. Hollow burrows harbor pups born fierce, wide-eyed, sharp-toothed, ready to fight even their own siblings. Rivalry begins at birth. The strongest survive, but the line decides fate. A daughter of rank inherits power. A daughter without it inherits strife. The seasons also chart their course. When the Nile floods, the prey scatters and the pack resorts to smaller game, hares, birds, young antelope. When the waters recede, life crowds into the remaining pools and hunts turn brutal. Packs flatten against the mud. Predators converge. Screams echo across the plain. Hyenas thrive on both feast and famine. Even where humans spread, they adapt. Settlements spring up. Roads cut through the savannah. Cattle replace wildebeest. Hyenas adjust once more. They raid corrals, prowl villages, and scavenge. To people, they become monsters, grave robbers, spirits, fur-covered demons. Fear twists into myth, but the truth is simpler. They survive because they are too clever, too tenacious to disappear. To the north, the Nile slows. The channel widens, dissolving into the vast Sud swamp. At its peak, the wetland may cover 130,000 square kilometers, a living maze of papyrus, canals, and floating grasslands. It's here that one of Africa's strangest survivors holds its ground, the African lungfish. The lungfish is ancient, part fish, part relic of a time when vertebrates first learned to breathe air. Along with gills, it possesses a lung-like organ that allows it to gulp in oxygen from the surface. In these waters, often smothered with plants and deprived of oxygen, that adaptation is essential. When floodwaters recede and pools stagnate, the lungfish burrows. It burrows into the mud, secretes a cocoon of mucus, and slows its heartbeat to a fraction of normal. In this estivated state, it can survive for months, waiting for the return of the rains. When storms break and the water rises again, the dormant lungfish awakens, bursting from the land to once again wander flooded channels. In the wet season, lungfish feed widely: mollusks, insect larvae, and small fish. They are also preyed upon by predators. Crocodiles wait for them at the surface, attacking when they come up to breathe. Giant herons skewer them in shallow water, while Sitatunga antelopes trampling the vegetation expose them to lurking opportunists. Even the swamp giants shape their world. Hippos carve channels with their mass, altering currents and opening new passages for fish. Elephants wading across floodplains disperse mats of vegetation, creating life-rich pools where lungfish feed. The lungfish linger in their wake, but the Sud is fragile. Plans to drain and channel its waters, like the long-delayed Jonglei Canal, threaten to silence its pulse. Without flooding, the swamp would shrink, and with it, the lungfish's refuge. An animal that survived hundreds of millions of years could disappear not because of drought or predators, but because of a river's engineering. Another notable inhabitant of these waters is the Nile lechwe, Cobus megaceros. Unlike the gazelles of the savanna or the congoni of the plains, this antelope belongs to the water. Attached to the swamps and floodplains that stretch along the White Nile, it is impossible to find them anywhere else in the world. The males announce themselves first, spiraling horns arching like natural sculptures and color contrasts with the green of papyrus and reeds. They are visible even from afar. The females, on the other hand, disappear among the reed beds. Their coats are pale, sandy, blending perfectly with stems swaying in the wind. The young cling to their mothers. Their skins bear the same muted tones. Constant immersion in the water leaves them with a sheen as if enameled by the swamp itself, their muscles slick and glistening in the sun. Long, splayed hooves distribute their weight on floating mats of vegetation. Where a buffalo would sink, the lechwe walks with ease. When hunger commands, they dip their heads underwater, severing tender stems of submerged plants. The swamp is their grazing ground. Yet despite this dominance, they remain vulnerable, for wetlands are never free from danger. Crocodiles lurk below, lions wait at the edges of dry land, birds of prey keep watch above. For much of the year, the lechwe remain in small groups, scattered among the channels, watchful and wary. But when the rains come, the swamp is transformed. The floodplains expand, new grasses sprout, and the still rhythm of life explodes into great movement. It is then that the Nile lechwe shares its world with one of Africa's hidden wonders, the migrations of Mongala gazelle and white-eared kob. The scale is staggering. More than 1 million animals rise from the floodplain, stretching across the horizon in restless waves. From afar, they appear less like individual beasts and more like a single organism, shifting and flowing across the savanna. They abandon the refuge of the swamp to follow the green wave, the fresh grasses that burst from the earth in the wake of storms. Hooves pound against the softened soil, voices rise in restless calls. Where there is such abundance, predators are never far away. Lions, Panthera leo, follow the prides, crouching in the tall grass. From the edge of the swamp, where solid ground meets endless reeds, they move stealthily. This is not the open savanna. There are no clear horizons to launch themselves across. Instead, a maze of papyrus walls, shifting channels, and mud islands. Swamp lions must be different. To survive here, they have learned new ways. On the plains, lions dash through the open grass, relying on speed and brute strength. Here, such tactics fail. The ground gives way beneath heavy paws. Water slows every step. Reeds hide prey, but also steal the lion's vision. Here, success comes not from long chases, but from waiting, remaining silent and suddenly erupting. The wet season is the harshest. Rain floods the swamp, and lechwe and Sitatunga scatter along its banks. Prey are on the alert. They know the reeds hide death. One false step means an ambush. For lions, every chase ends in exhaustion. Their coats are heavy with mud. Their strength is drained by the swamp's grip. When the waters recede, fortunes change. The vegetation shrinks into scattered patches. Herbivores gather in dense groups around what remains. For lions, it is a season of opportunity. However, danger lurks in equal measure. Hyenas arrive in greater numbers, prowling the same prey grounds. Crocodiles remain motionless at the edges of shrinking pools, ready to pounce. The night offers no respite either. Antelopes huddle together, their eyes flashing with fear. Lions stalk through black papyrus corridors, invisible until the last moment. Their roars shake the night, proclaiming dominance, warning rivals and uniting the herds. And yet, success is never guaranteed. One false step on treacherous ground and the prey escapes. The swamp shapes more than its hunts. It forms its families. The packs here are smaller than the great gatherings of the Serengeti. Dry land is scarce, food is unpredictable. A handful of related females raise their cubs together, led by dominant males. The males patrol islands of dry land. They defend the territory with the same ferocity as their plains cousins, but their kingdom is fragmented, broken, vulnerable. Hyenas are never far behind. They follow the lions, waiting for the moment of weakness. On hunts they pounce, their cackling filling the air, their bravery bolstered by numbers. Sometimes they win, scattering the pack, seizing the spoils. Other times the lions fight back, a single swipe, a crushing bite, and the scavengers retreat. Yet they return, again and again. And then there are the crocodiles. A lion that comes close to drink risks more than thirst. A cub that gets too close can disappear in an instant, dragged beneath the surface. Even adults aren't safe. Crocodiles attack with explosive force, and the lions know it. They drink fast, watchful eyes scanning the water, ready to retreat at the first move. This place doesn't allow for a true king. Lions may rule the land, but the swamp is shared. Beyond this swamp, the lions' fate darkens. Once their roars echoed across deserts, forests, and plains, from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. Now the IUCN lists them as vulnerable. In West Africa, their situation is even worse, with populations listed as critically endangered. Only in the Serengeti, the Mara, the Okavango, the Kruger, and the Etosha do prides still thrive, sustained by vast ecosystems protected by human will. In the swamp, however, the struggle continues. While lions and antelopes dominate the drama of predator and prey, the skies above the Nile tell another story. The bird life thrives in astonishing diversity. Great white pelicans soar in unison, their wings flashing pale gold in the sun. Grey herons stand like statues on the bank, waiting for their prey. Storks, ducks, and ibis gather in dense flocks when the receding waters expose rich feeding grounds. Each season brings new arrivals as migratory visitors from Europe and Asia swell the local populations. For a brief time, the swamp echoes with their calls. Beyond the labyrinth of the Sud, the Nile's channels begin to narrow. The high walls of reeds fade, and the swamp opens onto the floodplain of South Sudan's Bahr el Ghazal. Here, the landscape stretches out to wide horizons, dormant for much of the year, its grasses withered, its beds reduced to shallow channels. But when the rains fall in the distant highlands, they sweep across this basin and awaken it. The parched expanses are transformed into shimmering sheets of silver water. The grasses turn green, replenishing the soil and recharging hidden aquifers. Pastoralists arrive from far beyond the plain, drawn to this seasonal transformation by an instinct older than memory. For a while, life flourishes. The first sign of life is often sound. The trumpeting calls of grey-crowned cranes soar above the chorus of frogs and insects. These birds soar nearly a meter high, their grey plumage contrasted by golden crowns that catch the light with every movement. As the waters spread, pairs leap into the air, bowing and dancing with outstretched wings, voices echoing. They cement lifelong alliances or ignite new ones. This display is synchronized with the rising river. If the floodwaters recede too quickly, their reed-woven nests are vulnerable. Here, as throughout the Nile, survival depends on the rhythm of the water. Beneath their wings, the plains darken with the mass of African buffalo. Shoulders dipped, their curved horns gleam on the surface as they advance to reach tender aquatic grasses. These herds, sometimes hundreds strong, feed at dawn and dusk, conserving energy in the heat by retreating to shade or water. Their bulk stirs the edges of the swamp, carving paths for smaller animals to follow. Beside them, Tiang antelopes traverse the plains. They move in looser herds, their slender bodies ready to turn at the slightest flicker in the grass. When predators test the herds, the Tiang respond with dozens of scattered decisions. Heads jerk up, legs ready to spring in long, ground-covering strides. But the floodplain doesn't remain bountiful forever. As the dry season progresses, the waters ebb. The grasses recede, leaving cracked mud behind. Birds that once filled the skies take flight in vast formations, vanishing to distant feeding grounds. Grazers follow the receding green, their paths narrowing with the dwindling wetlands. Those that remain adapt, testing the land's diminishing bounty. And then, almost without transition, the vast wetland ends. The river flows into the arid heart of Sudan. The banks narrow into a green ribbon surrounded by desert. From the edge of the desert, they enter the light. Small, delicate, but sculpted for survival, the Dorcas gazelles, Gazella dorcas. Twilight is their hour. They move silently, swift, alert, always weighing the risk. Their sandy coats gleam pale by day, then fade into the dunes at night. Camouflage perfected, they approach the water. Slender legs barely disturb the sand. A pause, ears twitch, noses perk up. Every sound is assessed. Only when the silence holds do they lower their heads to drink. Even then, they never relax. Muscles remain tense, ready for the leap that will decide life or death. The desert offers nothing easily. Weeks go by without rain. Lakes dry up in cracked clay. Still, the gazelles endure. They draw water from leaves, stems, and roots hidden in the sand. The males guard the dunes. They patrol silently, marking the sand with their scent. Rivals are warned off with a look, a stance, a tilt of the head. In the breeding season, tension heightens. A rival enters. Horns clash. Dust rises. The fight is brief, violent, and decisive. One stands, the other gives way. But nothing defines them more than flight. When danger approaches, the silence is broken. A sudden burst of movement, legs flash, dust explodes, the desert becomes a blur. They run, not in straight lines, but in sharp cuts, zigzags, sudden shifts, unpredictable, untouchable. Predators lunge, stumble, miss. Gazelles hurtle across the plains, speed and agility fused into a perfect escape. Then, silence. They disappear into the distance. Their tracks are soon afterward erased by the wind. It's as if they were never there. Ghosts of the desert. Every evening they return, cautious, vigilant, untouched. The desert tests them every day, and every day they endure. Crocodiles remain in smaller, more dispersed groups than in the south, confined to shaded pools where water lingers. By day, the desert seems empty. Only the slow sway of camel caravans crosses the land, but at night it awakens. Gerbils hop erratically between burrows, desert hares advance toward the sparse grasses, and fennec foxes glide like ghosts across the dunes. At dawn, the surface empties again, and even here the Nile carries history forward. Its course narrows and quickens between granite outcrops, breaking into rapids known for centuries as the cataracts. For ancient traders and armies, these turbulent stretches were both barrier and frontier. For wildlife, they are a place of carved stone niches. Hyraxes bask in the first light, their round bodies absorbing heat before retreating into crevices at the first glimmer of shade from above. Higher up, Berber sheep carefully advance along near-vertical faces, never missing a step. From shaded ledges, vervet monkeys descend to drink, watching the water as if reading its hidden threats. Even here, crocodiles lurk, and the monkeys know not to linger in the deeper pools. The river continues to press, its force dispersing and gathering until the falls subside. The banks part once more, the landscape softening into wider plains. This final stretch carries the Nile toward its destination. In northern Egypt, after a journey of 6,650 kilometers, it dissolves into the Mediterranean through the Great Fan of the Delta. Seen from above, the delta unfolds like a green hand against the ochre of the desert. For millennia, this place has nourished both people and creatures. It is a crossroads, a sanctuary, a stage where air, land, and sea collide. The birds arrive first. Thousands descend on shifting waves, their wings turning the horizon into movement. Greater flamingos advance gracefully. Long necks bending, heads dipping, drawing life from shallow lagoons, they move together, a rhythm of pink and white against the still water. From the reed beds, purple herons rise like liberated shadows, their slow wing beats heavy with intent. Squacco herons freeze mid-stride until a strike, swift, precise, final. Glossy-backed flamingos cross the sky in metallic arcs, green and bronze flashing with each turn. White storks spiral higher, riding invisible currents, destined to cross continents, but here they circle, tethered for a moment to this place. The waters hold their own mysteries. Among the papyrus, otters glide unseen, whiskers trembling at faint vibrations, eyes alert to the flash of scales below. They hunt, disappear, return to secret shores where the sun warms their thick coats. They spend hours between hunger and rest. Beneath them, the soft-shelled turtles of the Nile remain hidden in the silt. Only a ripple, a pair of nostrils breaking the surface, betray their presence. Then a surge, sudden, relentless. They belong to the current itself, half flesh, half shadow. Fish swarm where the river's gift meets the sea's hunger. Fresh water collides with salt water, carrying nutrients in invisible floods. Here, life congregates in numbers, feeding, breeding. Sometimes even dolphins breach this boundary. And yet, for all its abundance, the delta is fragile. Rising seas advance, licking the earth, salting the soil where tall crops once stood. Upstream dams choke the flow. Without this untamed flow, the land weakens. Each year the balance tilts further, the green hand shrinking, its grip on survival loosening. For now, the delta holds. The reeds bend but rise again. The birds return as they always have. Fish congregate, otters swim, turtles wait. Life persists even when the odds lean toward loss. For centuries, the Nile has brought its final gift here, unfolding into canals, feeding marshes, stretching toward the sea.